Yo, peace to you all. Peace to you all. Of course, it's another podcast by, of course, the original host, Amani Gray. We are, of course, doing the Afro Latinx Leadership Alliance podcast once again. So, of course, I have my man Aziz here from the UMLA. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, this is Aziz, BMCC alum. I'm currently the coordinator for the B UMLA program here at BMCC, Columbia prospective student, studying social work. I think that's kind of all I got for now.
All right.
Yeah.
Still a lot of accolades. All right. So, of course, originally I wanted Aziz here for the mental health episode. But, of course, you will see that we had other people go ahead and talk about that as well. Still as great as it should be. So we're going to be switching that to, of course, what is the identity of a black man in America. So I want to actually hear your definition on that. Like, at least let's start with that. Like, what do you feel defines a black man in America?
What defines a black man in America? I feel like that's a hard one. That feels like a loaded question, right? Because I think maybe the first question is, what is a black man, right? Forget just in America, right? Because full background, like I'm African, and I know for me growing up, like being black was not something that I considered, right? Like I was just a man, right? I don't know if there was a differentiation between being a man and being a black man, because I don't know, we didn't really compare it to anything else, right? Like you knew, right? Like when I think about like my parents, like they talk about the white man as though like they're like the superior, quote unquote, versions of us, but not to the full degree. I don't know. Like I feel like that's such a hard question to answer, right? I don't know. I guess if I was to start over, a black man in America is just a man who is doing or should be doing all the things that it takes to like hold down a household, right? Providing food on the table, making sure that everyone is like comfortable, happy. But obviously, I think in the system that we kind of like all grew up in, you know how difficult that can be, right? So I don't know. Yeah.
All right. So a lot of things were said there. Yeah, I did kind of just throw like a really hard question for off the bat, because there's so many ways you could take that question. I just wanted to see how you would take it, but you kind of just went in more of the holding, just the more not even just on the the black, more like on the man itself. You know, you went more onto the gender side of like, okay, these are the things that I would expect a man to do, whether or not he's white, black, or is just this is what you should do whether or not. So, which does make sense. It's just I mean, for me, if I had to put the definition, I feel there is different expectations in terms of what a black man should do compared to what other races really should do. Of course, the man thing is still there. It's just I feel like black men aren't really expected to act the same way as every other race. It's like there's a little bit of a line that's there.
Right. So I hear you, and it's funny. I'm always like compelled to like ask you like, what is the difference between a black man versus an Asian man, right? I mean, I feel like for the most part, like when we talk about the black man, it feels as though we talk about the black man as though like he never meets the expectation of what a man should actually be, right? And I think that's such a hard one for me to swallow, because I feel like to some degree it's just like a lot of us do show up in the ways that we're supposed to, right? But I think the ones that make it on the headlines, on the news, on the Instagram posts and whatever, they are the ones who kind of fall short, which then makes all of us look like we're all falling short. So I'm not sure, and maybe it was true at a point, right, that some black men weren't showing up, right? But I think to another degree, again, like a lot of us, well, at least the folks that I know, like we're showing up, right? So maybe you want to tell me a little bit about maybe the difference between black men and maybe like men of other races?
Well, this is also coming from like, it's not really a lot of where I'm hearing this from, because like I'm young, of course, like I'm not gonna fully know what a man, especially a black man, should do. So a lot of that is derived from what I'm hearing from others.
Right.
So this opinion I'm about to give is a little bit mixed. Like, okay, this is what I agree with. This is my. It's like it's subjective for my personal view, and I think that's why I'm like, giving this disclaimer. But at least for me, I feel like. Of course, the man thing is still there. That's still like I provide for your family, make sure everything is okay. It's just, I think the way to get to that position is different for us compared to like, of course, Asian or white and stuff like that, because I definitely feel our upbringing is kind of mixed into that. It's like what values are instilled into us. For example, Asian people, they are pushed into education almost to a fault. It's almost abusive how far they're pushed into. You need to be a doctor or a lawyer, this, and that. And it could be argued that some, maybe on the African side, that is pushed. But I think once you reach America, it's like that's a little bit lost. So I feel getting up there is not really a steady path of, consistent. It's more like just get up there by any means possible. It's like, for example, some people will scam, some people will steal and rob to do that. And I think that's more prevalent in the black community than anything else. Not saying we're robbers and this, and that. It's just I feel like we're more willing to do that in a way.
Yeah, to me, like that feels like a system, right? Right. I think in the same way that you just talked about the Asian community, the Asian men being pushed or maybe forced into education, as high of an education that they can get, right? At an earlier stage, like that's their own, I guess, like internal system, right? And that's how they've been able to knock down the barriers that they've been faced with. I think, unfortunate for us, maybe like we don't have the same system in place, right? Like our system feels is like you kind of have to get it by any means necessary. But education has not been one of those means for a while, right? And so the scamming, because it's quick money and you know that you'll make a quick buck, right? And you'll be able to flex on whoever you need to flex on, just to let them know that you're doing it, right? And to some degree, it just feels as though like we haven't been given all the options, right? And I think that's kind of like one of the biggest things that I've kind of like taken up, especially as I've kind of like moved through education, like higher education. I'm like now serving as an advisor. It just feels like a lot of the folks we talk to nowadays don't have all the options available to them, right? Like if you knew that if you wanted to kind of like, let's say become an artist, right? Not just a rap artist, but like an actual artist, like you did like paintings and things like that. If you knew that there was a sure way for you to make money off of it, you wouldn't hesitate to go into that path. But if your thing is you wanted to be an artist, but everyone you knew was just like artists struggle, artists don't eat, right? What is it called? The struggling artist. Like, like no one wants that, right? When they're considering like their future, right? Like no one wants that when they're like, oh, like this is how I'm going to like basically live my life. No one wants that. But if you told somebody I wanted to be an artist and they said, well, here's the blueprint as to like how you can do it, right? Like from what I know now, if you wanted to be an artist and your art was like you made art on a canvas, you can sell your art. Yes, that's one. You can also get grants before you even start the project, right? And that grant will pay for the art itself. It will pay for your time. It will pay for the studio. It will pay for the materials, right? And then it will also tell you exactly who to give the art to, right, in order to make more money, right? Like there's a whole bunch of things that we don't know. But if we knew, we would be like, oh, like that's what I want to do. This is how I do it. I'll be more inclined to do it that way, right? That's like, and I think even the scamming thing, like most of us, well, I'm saying most of us, like I do it, but like most, right? But like folks scam because there's a blueprint, right? Like if you're talking to your man who scams, he has a blueprint as to how he does it, right? In the same way that like an investor knows how to read the charts and say, hey, if the chart goes this way, it will eventually drop over here, right? Like there's a system, there's an algorithm that they have now developed to kind of like make sure like they get in the most out of what they're doing. But we know like very niche things, right? And so when we talk to other people, we can only talk about the things that we know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like education has not been something that a lot of us know front to back, right? Which is not why we're talking about it, right? You talk about the rap game because literally like that's what everyone does, right? We talk about basketball because that's literally what everyone does.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think to some degree it's just like if you're not an expert in this thing, what are your friends going to say? Why are you talking?
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, like, I think that's just what it is. Like, we are only talking on the experiences that we've had access to, you know? And I think maybe for me, like, that might be the biggest difference is the system that we kind of all grew up in.
Yeah.
Right?
I could definitely attest to that. I had two examples in my head about it while you were talking. I'm gonna just go with the big one first because I have a little brother, but it's like my half brother. I didn't know I never met him until this year, and me and him had a conversation because he's not on the legal side of things,
Okay.
and especially on what he's selling. Not to put him out there. And me and him had a whole conversation because like he's one of those people that has the interest in what he wants to do but doesn't have, like you said, was the blueprint. And I sat there and I broke it down to him because he was making the decision whether to live with my father or go back to what he already knows. And I was telling him, hey, just work with my dad, because my dad was trying to put him into a trade and this and that. But my brother was like, no, I want to sell this and I want to try to sell it. And I'm like, okay, if you just deal with my dad real quick, you get this, heating and cooling trade job. You can invest into a business of the sort that you want to do. You could create an LLC and this and that. Because I was telling him this sort of thing that you're selling it's legal, but it's not legal in all states yet. So there's still a market to grab there.
Are you talking about marijuana?
Yeah, I just didn't want to put them out there. I didn't want to put them out there. I didn't want to put them out there. But it's like, it's not fully legal yet. But if you take advantage of it now, because like, especially I've been just hearing things about marijuana. It's like some of it is not, I mean, lack of a better term, organic. It's not, they might put some things in there. There might be metal in there. There might be this and that. So it's like, if you build yourself up now and you create a business off of that. And I told him I could show him step by step because I've gone through a process of making an LLC for my dad. I could show him how to do that when he gets to that point, and I could help him with the paperwork.
Right.
If he just makes the right product and that lasts 5 to 10 years, and then people, you know, because everyone is going to, like, it's a really popular thing to do is weed. It's just, is it healthy? You know, is the thing that you're using is healthy? Because that's what people probably will start struggling with. If my brother is the person that people could say, like, yeah, I've been using his product for 5 to 10 years. I haven't had problems, but my cousin just died off of this other thing. That reputation will build for him.
Right.
I told him all of that, and he still chose to go back to what he already knew. So I tried to give him the blueprint, and he just didn't pick it up fully. He went back to what he knew already.
Right.
He's still doing good for himself in that sort of sense, but it's like he just didn't want to break out of that shell for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, a habit is a hard thing to break, right? You know, like, if one thing is, what is it saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just because it ain't broke don't mean that you can't make improvements on it.
Exactly.
You know, but that's a hard mind state to be in, you know? Like, even me, like, I'm a person who doesn't like change, right? Like, when I know something, I know it, right? And I'm really good at, like, staying in the thing that I know, because if I have to, like, move into something else, I'm basically starting fresh, right? I'm a novice at this thing again, right? And that space is a very uncomfortable space to be in, you know, and no one wants to be there. And, you know, it's funny, I think about 2 months ago, I sat in a conference where they told me that the mayor's office actually created an entire initiative with funds for folks who wanted to get into cannabis. Right, so there's money out here for folks who want to get into that business, right? And there are folks who will teach you how to, like, get your business up and running. Like, even me myself, like, I don't smoke, I don't care for it at all. But like when you see a business opportunity that's like in the billions, I don't know who's really gonna turn around and be like, I don't want that, right? So I started looking into it, and so I've been talking with some partners, and they're like, and you know, a lot of the conversations for us is like, if you have a lounge already, or you have a restaurant already that is not doing so well, provide, right, and you know, get registered to like sell cannabis there, right? Maybe in the backyard, right? And the same way that you get an alcohol license, you can do the same thing for cannabis, right? And then just turn it into an experience, right? We talk about speakeasies, right? And it's like, okay, cool, everyone smokes, and obviously you can get weed from literally any corner in New York City. But what's the difference between you just copping weed on a corner and you walking into a space that's legal, right, to get it and then get an entire experience from it? You know, it's a different mind state, and to me, like, part of it is just really just exposing, right? I think for a lot of us, right, because I'll give my little brother as an example here. My little brother wanted to do cannabis, right? And he was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this. I was like, cool, go do that. He never did it, right? I was like, why? I came back like months later, like, why didn't you do it? He was just like, oh, you know, like life happened. I was just like, I'm sure life happens for all of us, but for me, I was just like, the real reason why you probably didn't do it is because you probably felt like it was a bigger task for you to take on, right? Now, if you had asked the right questions, you had been around people who were interested in the same thing, then you probably would have gotten this thing off the ground, right? Like, and I think the challenge also was like my dad, right, African parents and all, you know, will come around and be like, oh, you said you were going to do this thing. Go do this. As a grown man, I'm like, and no other person is going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Right? And when to do it. You get me? Right? And so, like, when I talk to my little brother, I'm in the habit of making sure, like, I don't tell, I ask. Right? You want to do this thing? Have you looked at this thing? This is the website. Have you looked at it? No? Maybe you should look at it. Right? If you got questions, come, let's talk. Maybe we can find a Reddit website that we can look at. Maybe we can find a Discord or something to like go talk to. Right? There's so many different opportunities now to like be in community with the same folks that are doing what you want to do. That it's just almost like, how could you not? You know? But everything for me starts with a question, right? And I don't know if this is like social work training or whatever it is, but it's like, ask a question and see what you get. If they're like, oh, I don't know, give them time to go figure it out, right? Like nothing, like I don't have a timetable for your life, right? But it's just like support, right? And I think that's the challenge with a lot of us, right? And it's like we don't know how to support without being like, this is mine.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not yours. It's not yours. You're supporting, and to support means to let it go. You provide the resources, you provide the information, and then you let it go. Right? For whoever, whatever they want to do with that information you just gave can do what they want to do with that. Right? But yeah. And I think to me, like, that is sometimes the difference between how we get success, right? It has to be internal, right? Because, like, let's say I made $10 because you told me to go do this thing. That $10 less feels like my $10, but it feels a lot like your $10 because you're the one who told me how to do it, right? And so if you ever left, will I feel comfortable repeating that same process to make the next $10? Calm down. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about anything I just said, but yeah.
No, it's really funny how, like, that's a lot of things that we just touched on basically, because I don't know if I should bring up another example or try to wrap it back into the black man thing, but it's like it's definitely the mindset at the end of the day, and also how our environment is. But it's like something, because I'm just now kind of in that process of realizing, like, wow, there is so many resources out there. Of course, it requires time, of course, and a lot of people don't want to put in the time and work, which that is, of course, the mindset thing. But it's like, I think it's a lot of not knowing. I think that's what it is. It's just a difference because, like, we already know how to, like, become a rapper. and stuff like that. Successful is a different thing in that, but it's like,
Yeah.
like all you need is a mic, this, and that, and just, you know, like literally every rapper will say the same thing once they're successful, especially our type of rappers. They will say like, yeah, I did this, and this. I had to hustle for this, to invest money into the studio, and then blah, blah, blah. I made a song and it became a hit. They literally give us the blueprint over and over and over again. But once you ask somebody, I mean, I'm the only rapper I could really think of that's, well, I could think of two actually. The only rappers that really somewhat talk about business was Nipsey Hussle and Larry June. Those are the only two I could really think of that actually say like, hey, like even though they're not rap, there is another way to get it. But I would say 98% of rappers are just saying like, yeah, this is how I did it. And then we take that mindset like, okay, yeah, they just blew up at 18, 19, or 20, got $1 million signing, and now they're rich. That's the process. Or just the same thing with the NBA.
Right.
So I really do think for us, it's just like we don't know, because I know a couple people, like, you know, that, for example, somebody that I went to high school with, he's dating a girl that has a white dad. Like, she's mixed, but her dad is white. And he told me, like, yeah, her father, like, got me into this business. He helped me, like, get into sales, and he's getting commission off of it. And when he told me that, it wasn't like jealousy or nothing like that. I didn't have that emotion. I was just like, wow, like, I just didn't even know people really did that. Like, I just didn't even know, like, people could get commission off of sales and this, and that. Like, the information he told me, I was like, wow. Like, if I was in that position, not like I want to take his position. It's just like, there's a position there that, like, you could do that. Like, it's just like, wow, that just opened my mind. Like, you could do that, you know? So I was just thinking about it. It's like, we really don't know a lot of these things. Because, like, the thing that I'm doing with my father, too, literally, like, the college over there, that, because it's in a different area, they literally give out free free seminars and classes to help you with your business.
Right.
And I was shocked. I was like, for free? Like, this is a free thing. They're just telling you how to get government contracts and where to go and this, and that, and it's for free. And I'm not hearing anybody talk about this. And even, I could bring up so many examples. Even my basketball coach, because we have this conversation from time to time, he told me that there's literally places where people, like, come together and just talk and, like, you know, trade business ideas and stuff like that, like what position they're in and this, and that, and collaborate. And I'm like, why am I not hearing anything about this?
Because everyone is a gatekeeper, right? Everyone is a gatekeeper, and you know, it's also one of those things, I think, where you don't want to share something because you feel like somebody else is not gonna find it fun, exciting the way you do. Right. So fun fact, Lehman College, CUNY, right, actually has a SBS program, right, a small business something, right, and what that program is, right, and as a CUNY student, actually as a New York City resident, you have access to it.
For free?
For free. Right. If you want to start your business, you don't know what your business is, it's okay, go there. They'll literally start the conversation with you. You want to start your LLC? Go there. They'll literally start the process with you, right? And they will consider what, like, resources you need, whether that be financial, legal, right, and all the other pieces in between that you actually need to get that business off the ground, right? They're great. If I can tell you how many people actually use that facility, they probably see maybe like 12 people a month, right? And it's probably the same people showing up every single time, which is crazy, right? And it's just like, all of these things are, like, available to you, but then, you know, like, folks would be like, why don't I know? I love sayings. There's a saying that says, if I look at your friends, I know who you are.
Yeah. You are who your friends are.
Right. And so if you're saying, like, I want to be an entrepreneur, and you turn around and you look at your friend group, and none of your friend groups want to be entrepreneurs, what's the likelihood that you're actually going to become an entrepreneur?
Very likely not.
Right. And so it's really about, like, putting like-minded people around you to, like, get the information, have the conversation, create that partnership, right? There's one other saying that I love. It's if you want to succeed and go, like, really far, you go with a group. If you want to succeed and go really fast, go by yourself. Right? And so, like, I love that saying because it's like, if I want to do something, it takes nothing if I have the motivation to, like, do it like this.
Mm-hmm.
But if I really want to, like, maximize the full potential of that, let's say, like, business that I want to start, if I did it with a bunch of other folks, their ideas, their input, their financial, like, contribution, all of that, like, really begins to expand the business to what I could have done alone, right? Because I'm like, I can always think about what I want to do, but that doesn't mean that I've considered all the possibilities of where this thing can go, right? If I'm sitting with other people, then you can kind of like fill in the blanks that I don't have, right? And I think like that's how you develop a bigger and better brand, right? Which is why you have to kind of like talk to people, right? I think maybe to take us back to the first thing that you said is like, what is a black man? A black man is a man who feels like he has to achieve success by himself. We don't, right? We absolutely do not, right? I'm not saying be vulnerable and cry about every little thing, right? That's not what I'm saying. But I think to some degree we do have to be able to say, you know what? Not everyone is the enemy, right? We love using the ops word. Not everyone is an op. I promise you, like not everyone. Like a lot of us have the best interest for each other. I think the challenge is we've been hurt, right? You know, like we talk about hurt with women, but no one really talks about the hurt you feel with another guy, right? Like I divulged this thing to you, and you looked at me and called me a little pussy, right? Like that hurts, and so you never want to feel that again, so you stop doing it, right? But imagine you said something to somebody and was just like, yo, like I was, you know, I was going out with my shorty, right? She did this thing, like that joint really hurt me, and I didn't know how to like manage that. And the guy he was talking to was just like, I haven't gone through that, but I can empathize, right? And he allowed you to like really just like put it out there. He didn't judge you for it. He make you feel small for it. Will you continue to have those conversations? Yes. Will you create space for him to have those conversations with you? Yes. But because we don't do that, right? Because the easiest thing for us to do is like to point and laugh. It creates a lot of separation between one of us, right? Like, I don't want to give you that vulnerable or that, like, weak side of myself because I don't want you to feel like that's all I am. You know, like, I feel like there's just so many different things, right? I don't know if it's cultural, right, or if it's system-based, right, as to, like, why we operate that way.
That's tough because it's like I've kind of had to sit there and create that space for, even though then, like, not every, actually, I'm not friends with a lot of purely black people, I think. I'm friends with, like, somebody that's mixed with black. I'm friends with 2 Asians and stuff like that. Well, 2 South Asians, so, like, Pakistani and Indian. And, of course, I'll have that conversation with anyone black. It's just, in my circle, there's not a lot for some reason. I don't know. I need to think about that. But usually, it was really hard. It was really hard because like I was doing this in like middle school and high school at this point. I was creating that conversation. And one of the examples, because it just happened recently, I'm not going to say his name because it was really personal. I knew him for years and stuff like that, but he's in London, but we only talk on the Xbox and stuff like that. But we've developed that trust somehow. And he has told me a lot of things. And I've known him since 2018. We probably became best friends at 2019. It's 2023 now. He just, I think it was last week, he told me how his older brother did something to him and the youngest brother in the family. And it was out of nowhere. It just, I don't even know I forgot what we were even talking about, because I do know it's about his family dynamics. But when he told me about that specifically, it's like, I wasn't shocked in the moment, because it's like, I told him, yo, I'm glad that you were able to trust me with this information. And he had a therapist too, so I told him, like, yo, you got to go tell your therapist, like, because he was telling me, like, yo, am I a bad person because I didn't defend this, and this properly? And I'm like, no, you were this age at this time in this situation that a lot of people don't even experience, you know? So having that conversation with him, I was thinking mostly in the back of my head, if he told anybody else that, like, they would just not have responded properly. Because even he said himself, it's like he hasn't told I think I was either the first or second person he ever told. because he was scared of getting judged.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that I was honored, like I literally told him like, yo, I'm honored that you told me this, and like you were able to give me that trust, because I knew him for years, and that was the first time he ever told me that, or anybody. So it's really hard to, I think it's really hard to create that space, because like I said, I've known him for years, and just last week he decided to tell me that, because I was always wondering, like he would always have like, you know, some quirks about him, like anxiety and stuff like that, and be scared of some things that I'm like, why are you scared? Like, I'm not calling him a certain thing. It's just like, I'm saying like, hey, this might be a little irrational fear that you have and stuff like that. And I wouldn't fully know where it's coming from. Even then, I've known him for years until this moment when he told me.
Right.
So it's really hard, I think, for just any man in general to open up about that stuff, and especially a black man where we go through so much. Like, even then, this man has trusted me to say that stuff. In a hypocritical sense, I keep a lot of stuff in. I keep a lot of stuff in, unless it's something like if I'm having an emotional breakdown, that's when I shoot the flare, and then I make sure like everyone like close to me knows about it. But a lot of small things that I go through, I know a lot of stuff about other people's day. I never tell people about my day. Right. And I always wonder that, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember. Nothing important happened. And then when I blow up, it's like, now I'm like, okay, this happened from this month to this, and this, and I'm telling the whole story, and it takes an hour for me to explain. So I don't know what causes me to do that. I don't know if it's like, in general, as a black man, I have to stay strong or something like that. Even then, I have that perception of myself. It's like, it's not like I'm not going to keep it in to keep myself strong. I know that's not right. But it's like the things that I go through, it's like I feel like I'm capable of handling it. Like I'm just capable of getting through it. And usually I am. But I think that's something that I definitely need to change. And I think a lot of black men kind of do that and don't recognize.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a flip side to it too, right? Because, you know, like I say this thing often. I'm like, you might be like me, right? I'm not going to make any assumptions, right? Where, like, I feel like I do a lot of checking in on folks.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I do a lot of checking in, there typically isn't a lot of room for folks to check in on me, right? And then when folks do check in on me, because that's not a muscle that they've exercised well, that muscle is not as strong as maybe how I need it to be, right? So you might be like, hey, Aziz, like, how are things going? I'm like, things are cool. Right? And that's the end of your questioning, right? And so there is no follow-up to be like, so, like, what's a cool day look like for you, right? Like, there's no, like, furthering questions to kind of, like, get the pieces out of you until you feel like, you know, maybe I should just probably be saying these things before you have to, like, dig it out of me, right? Because you probably do that for folks, right?
Yeah.
Right? But you don't find yourself on that other side. So it may not be I'm a black man and I don't know how to like express myself. It's I'm just a man and people think I'm strong, and so they haven't checked in, right? So, you know, it could be a number of things, right? And so, like, because I'm like, a bunch of things could be possible at once, right? Being a black man could have made you tough. Being a black man could have made you soft. Right? But being hard or soft don't mean that your mouth don't work. You know? Have you felt comfortable to just say what's on your mind?
Yeah, it's just, I think it's me thinking, because like when you were saying that, like the muscle has not been exercised, it's like sometimes when I do go for them, I mean, this is in the past though, but I did say to myself, it's like the things that I've said to myself handling it, they have said it and stuff, because like I feel like I have a very high emotional intelligence, because I've been through things and I've recognized them immediately before even my friends recognized it. Like if I recognize signs of like, okay, this might be an abusive situation I'm in, like, or something like that, I said it. Like when I was telling somebody the story, I was like, I feel like this is going one or two ways right now. Either this is becoming an abusive thing, or I just need to give this person more time to recover. And it ended up being an abusive thing, and I was right. And the dude that I was talking to about, one of my close friends that I walk with like every Sunday, he shook his head like, yeah, that I'm glad that you were able to recognize that. Like, and I say that, I'm like, when I was going in that motion, it's like I caught it immediately. I caught whatever was about to be a problem. I just caught it immediately. So it's like the advice that I usually get back, unless it's something that I can't figure out by myself, like I need a third, fourth, fifth opinion, and then they're all saying the same thing and it confirms what I'm saying, then that's usually when I, of course, like I said, shoot the flare. But usually if it's like just a small thing, maybe I'll be like, yeah, I'm just going through it, or I feel like I'm not around somebody that's capable of understanding. I feel like I have to keep it to myself because I'm the only one equipped to understand it myself in a way.
Yeah, and that's fair. You know, I think that thinking typically comes from like no one can provide a better answer than I can.
Yeah.
You know, which is like a good thing and a bad thing, right? Which, you know, like it's a good thing because you will take care of all things, right? It's a bad thing because then you haven't built the muscle to like be able to like rely on other people, right? To either help you work out the issue or to maybe just like, you know, resolve the issue all at once, right? You know, and everything is circumstantial, right? I'm like, there is no one way to be a person in this world, right? I feel like with different circumstances, right? Like whether it be a lack of emotional, like presence in the household, right? Financial situations that just like make it really hard for you to like navigate the world. Your ability to like speak, like all of these different factors like really create the world that you walk through, right? Like I absolutely hate this saying that like all black people know what other black people go through. I'm like, that is the furthest thing from the truth.
I never even heard of that saying.
Right, because like I'm studying social work, right? And so first day, this was a week ago actually, first day of my orientation at Columbia University, I'm sitting there with a bunch of like other black men, you know, like they shout us out, which was cool, but you know, for me I was just like this is nice, but I don't know if I needed the recognition. Right? I don't know if I need the extra recognition of being in this space. You know, like I'm like, my academics should have spoken to why I was in the space.
Yeah.
Not for it to be, oh, because you're black is why you're in the space. Right? And like that's kind of how I felt when, you know, he shouted me out, and I was just like, it's like that didn't feel so good. Right? But I couldn't say that because in his mind, he was doing something positive. Right? And I'm like, shout out for you for doing something positive, at least intently anyways. You know, but the other side of it was what he said that came after, which was just like, if you're a black man studying social work, looking to be a therapist for other people, you should have a black social worker or a therapist. And I was just like, why? Right? I was like, why? You know, and his response was like, ain't nobody gonna get you the way another black person gonna get. I was like, oh. I was like, all right. You know, and then he continued to talk about like how he blasted another black man on Zoom because the black man disagreed with his point that every black person needed to have a black therapist. And I was just like, aren't you, like for me, I and as he said this, I was like, you're as much of the problem as anyone else, right? Because again, I have had numerous black therapists, and I'm like, they were trash. I've had one that I thought was really good. Unfortunately, my insurance didn't cover, so we had to let her go. But, you know, I'm like, you and I sharing an identity in one space doesn't mean that you see my identities in all the other spaces. You know, like, one of my therapists identified me as her child. Right, based on the experiences that I've had, because she could see her son going through some of the same things, right? And so she showed up in our sessions just kind of like really feeling bad for me. And every time she said something, you know, she would say, my son. And I'm like, your son is not here.
Yeah.
Right? Aziz is here. This is Aziz's session, right? Like, please just deal with me, right? And don't lump me into this idea of what you think I am supposed to be, right? And, you know, again, to me, like, this is part of the reason why I'm just like, we should ask the question, not tell, right? Because assumptions do kill, right? And we can see that with some of these gun news that we see, right? You made an assumption and somebody died for it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm not saying like that's the extreme for me, but, you know, like, this is one of the reasons why I'm like, we should do our best to not make assumptions. Like, even to your first question, like, what is a black man? I'm like, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't really know. I can talk about who I am, right? But I can't talk about what a black man in America really is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I don't know every black man in America, right? Some of us are really successful. Some of us are not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's the gaps in between the successful one and the not-so-successful one, right? I could talk a little bit about that, but I don't have data in front of me to, like, distinctively talk about it. And so, like, to me, like, that's a hard one, right? But there's a lot of assumptions made as to, like, black men being lazy, black men, especially Africans, being scammers, right? I'm like, but you don't know me,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if you took the time to get to know me, you'll be very much surprised as to, like, all the things that I've done, right? And, like, how we've gotten to where we are today.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could definitely, there's a lot there, because, like, I kind of had that perception as that dude as well. I wasn't really pushing it as hard, mostly because I listen to a podcast. It's mostly a financial podcast, but he also talks about, you know, mindset that matters and stuff, so he's kind of going through a little bit of a therapist era of that podcast right now, as to call it. And I don't know if, I don't think he directly stated that, but he definitely has put up that perception, because a lot of the therapists or people that he talks to are black women. So when he's talking about the mental stuff, it's a black therapist, or it's just a black woman therapist and stuff. So I came up with the perception that, like, or maybe even though I'm not sure, because I can't fully remember, but maybe even the black therapist was like, yeah, you know, black people will understand each other more. I half agree with that statement, because I feel like a lot of black people have grown up with similar things, especially if you've grown up in a certain area. It's like a lot of things are relatable for us, but that doesn't mean we went through the exact same thing. So it's like, I think, of course, it still depends on the person at the end of the day, but it's like, I feel like I do feel at least at the time, until before you said this, like, I thought at the time a black therapist would understand me a little bit more than a white or Asian or something like that. But at the end of the day, it's still a skill that requires, because the person that you were talking about is blasting somebody because, what was it again? Because he didn't have a
because he didn't believe that he should have a black therapist.
Yeah, it's
right?
It's like that basically both, you know, like saying like, oh, you don't need a black therapist. Well, hold on, I'm trying to say, like, both end of the extremes are, like, bad, basically. Like, his extreme is bad, and then the other version of that, we need to be somewhere in the middle of that.
You know, and it's funny. I feel like I'm shifting the convo a little bit, but it's funny because for me, therapy, right, in the way that we see it today, feels like a right, right? But in a lot of spaces, it's a privilege.
Yeah.
Right? And so to hear, I mean, it's really good to hear it, right? Like, to hear the right, like, you have a right to have a therapist combo. Right, but then you think about all the other people who actually need counseling and aren't able to get it.
Yeah.
Right, because it's a privilege to have it. Can you afford a therapist? Like, do you know how much, like, an actual therapy session costs?
Yeah.
Right, you know, like, it's a lot. Right, like, does your insurance cover it? Right, or does your insurance cover the one that you actually want? Right, like, there's a lot of, like, nuances to, like, take into consideration, like, when you're, like, talking about therapy, you know. And so for me, it's, like, really interesting, because for one, I'm like, therapy is a personal choice, right?
I don't know, because it's bringing up another example, because one of my friends, he was going through something, and I straight up told him, like, yo, like, you need to go find a therapist. No offense to him, I didn't call him crazy or nothing, but I think I'll get into that.
You know that's hard. You know that's hard, though.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you tell somebody they need to go find a therapist, that's hard. That's like something wrong with you, bro.
Yeah, I meant it in a way. It's like, I told him, because I feel like I am not equipped for the things that you're telling me. Like, it's like it's something too deep that I don't have the knowledge of. That if you went to somebody that's equipped for that, I think things will be easier for you. And not only that, I'm not saying to tell, like, I mean, he was telling me about his therapy sessions, but I did tell him, like, if you tell me what the therapist is saying, I could at least see what their point of view is, like, somebody from a trained professional, and then tell you my personal opinion from what they're saying, and see if it aligns, or if I feel like, because there's bad therapists out there. Maybe I could disagree with this therapist and he also disagrees and we could disperse from that. The problem was he couldn't find one because it required his parents getting involved. That was the issue. He didn't want his parents involved. So he had to go into the counseling center and stuff like that. And I realized, like, yeah, that was really tough for him to go through because because I didn't want him to not go into therapy, but it's like I didn't want to tell him to disobey his parents or get his parents involved. So it's like, and I feel like sometimes counseling centers aren't as equipped as actual therapists, I think. So it was really hard. But I do think at the end of the day, going to the counseling center did help him, especially because the therapist or counselor was saying similar things to what I was saying. So it made me confirm, like, okay, I am saying the right things. I'm giving the right advice. But that thing of it being a privilege is definitely correct because it's very hard. Especially I feel like the younger generation, like my generation, definitely would need it the most at this point. But we're not living by ourselves. Like, we're still under somebody else's power, and that somebody else's power might be the damn issue.
Yeah, I mean that's a big one, right? It's being ruled by another person, right? Even when that person says that they have your best interest, there's a stigma that comes with therapy, right? You know, and when you said, you know, you said to your friend, like, you should probably see a counselor. Right. I remember having a similar conversation with another friend of mine where I think they said it to me, right? And I was just like, what are you trying to say? Right? You know, so there is a stigma there naturally, right? And for a lot of us, right, we still don't know how to navigate that conversation, right? There was something that you said, like, right after that I was just like, if you didn't say that, I wish you had said that, right? Which was, I think you should see a counselor for this, and this, because I'm not equipped, right? You made it about you, not them, right? Like, I'm not equipped to handle what you're telling me, and I think a professional might be able to, right? So you made it about you, so that way it didn't feel like an attack on them, right? And I think some of those practices, right, in terms of, like, how we communicate with each other truly helps, right, move some of these conversations along. Right, because me just saying to you, like, I think you need therapy, foot stop. You leave a lot of room for me to assume what you mean about that. But if you said, I actually don't think I'm equipped to take in everything you're saying and provide you with the adequate resources you need, maybe if you spoke to this person instead, you might have a better chance to get what you actually need. But I'm still here to have the conversation with you, but I think, like, some conversations that I shouldn't actually be a part of, right? But you would need to know what that looks like for you to be able to say that, right? But if you don't, like, that's a really big ask, right? And, like, a lot of us don't know how to do that, right? Like, I say always, I'm studying like, how to be a therapist for sure, but I'm not one, right? And even if I'm practicing even if I'm using some of my tools on you, who's to say I'm using it adequately, right? Like, I might get it wrong. Like, I'm not licensed by the state to do this work, right? I'm also not being compensated to do this work, right? And so I'm your friend, not your counselor, right? And we need to kind of, like, bridge the two, right? Like, I can't be both for you, right? Because the confidentiality piece that you need, I can't give it to you as your friend, right? If you want to be able to say this thing in a very secure space, know that whatever you said is, like, only for you in that space, not even the therapist, but you in that space. Telling your friend your business, especially, like, the real sensitive pieces, me personally, I don't know. Like, that's the safest way to go about things. You know? But trial and error, man. Trial and error. You know, but, you know, to, like, tie it all back to, like, you know, the black male experience, it's I feel like for the most part we're not having enough conversations around these things, right? You know, maybe the other piece is we do talking in absolutes, right? Like, if you're, you know, like, you listen to some of these rap music and, like, the guy's just like, yo, like, if you do me wrong, I'm gonna take your girl. It's like, okay, who are you that you think you can actually do that? That's one, right? That's such an ego trip, right, that I just can't get over. right? But some people really live and die by the music they listen to, you know. And heavy on the people. Some people really live and die by the music they listen to.
Yeah.
You know. And so I'm not saying that the music is part of the reasons why some of us move the way we move, but I am gonna say it does contribute to some degree, right, to how like we operate, right? Because I think when you consider all the things that you know now, you had to learn it from somewhere, right? Even the language that you use, you had to learn it from somewhere, right? The man that you are today came from someone else or someone else, right? So I don't know. Our culture, right, really needs to be looked at, right, in terms of like what we say, how we say it, what we listen to, right, the things that we see, all of these things, right. When we talk about like, cognitive development, right, like there's a study that shows that like all the things that you see once you literally are in the womb to literally the moment you come out, like play a huge role on how your development is. Your environment says a lot about you, right? I could talk a little bit about that, but that sounds like an entirely different conversation than the one we're gonna have today.
Yeah, because I actually want to bring it back to the music, because I remember it because like I went through something that really frustrated me mentally. And the music I was listening to at the time, because somebody gave me a bunch of files and stuff like that of music. So it was just like I was just listening to, like, it was just a bunch of old rap and stuff like that, like 90s and a little bit, I think 89 was the oldest. And I started listening to Mobb Deep. And I think it was the infamous album. It was Cradle to the Grave, the third verse by Prodigy. And a lot of the things that he said in that verse, I've either, like, during that situation I said, or something similar to that, or I thought. And when he said those things and he put it into that perspective, it was encouraging violence. So I was literally thinking that for a while, and I was thinking that for 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm like, because I'm not a violent person, but the fact that this is in my head, it's like, I might need to turn off this album, because I just have to. It's just not helping me get over the situation that I went through, because like I don't want to do that. Even then I feel that way, I don't want to do that because there's consequences to that. So it just really, I really do think that the music does contribute, because like some people don't recognize the lyrics that they're saying or doing. Like they'll repeat the lyrics but don't really understand the weight, and if they do understand the weight, they're probably doing it at that point. So it's like I did have to cut myself off, because it's like I don't want to repeat that. I don't want to do that really at all.
Like, I remember being sad and listening to what I thought was like happy music, but the lyrics were like sad, and that made me even sadder, right? And it's funny, like that's one of the reasons why I actually love listening to sometimes like Mexican music, because from what I've learned, it's like a lot of the music is sad, but the rhythm, the cadence, and the beat of the music is like so upbeat. Because I don't speak a lick of Spanish, right? I can just translate it as though they're just saying happy things, right? But once I asked like one of my Hispanic friends like what they were actually saying, he was like, yeah, like he lost his mom, his dog died, his girl left him, like he became. I was like, no, I was like, there's no way, right? Like just listening to like the sounds, not the words. I perceived an entirely different like theme about this song, right? But listening to the words and understanding the song, I was just like, oh, like if I was depressed listening to that, God, right? Like that would have just like been the nail on the coffin right there, And so it's really just understanding, right? Like. There's a lot of things that I think naturally we're just not cognizant of. And we do it, right? Because we assume like this is the thing that we're supposed to be doing, right? But again, like to me, like there is no right or wrong way, right? Initially, right? I think as time goes on, you like develop that, right? Depending on who you're talking to, you'll probably get a perspective of like what's right or wrong, like. Even the conversation around monogamy.
I didn't think we would get to this.
You know, like in some groups, like in some of my friends' groups, monogamy is wrong. It's unnatural, right? You know, and you'll get a lot of guys who are like, yeah, like, no, bro, like, you're supposed to be out here, like, rocking everything that you can get your hands on, right? In other groups, they're like, nah, monogamy is the way you're supposed to function. Like, that's how a disciplined man moves through the world, right? You identify one woman, right? You identify her as your partner. You take the steps to make her your partner, right? And you stay focused on that one thing, right? And that, for them, is right. And on the other side, what they think, you know, surrounded like monogamy being wrong, is right too.
Mm.
I'm like, I can't say one is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? I can't say that. Right? I mean, I can share my experience and, you know, and share my opinion, but like, who am I to tell you that your way of life is wrong?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's not, right? I can have an opinion, but I could also choose not to share it. You know, I think, what's the saying? Love sayings. To each his own.
Yeah.
To each his own, right? As long as it doesn't disrupt like my way of life,
Mm-hmm.
I'm perfectly fine with you living your life however you want to live it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I could speak for myself. Like, I never really had conversations about that, but I've heard conversations. Like, I'll be watching videos and stuff, and that topic get brought up. It's very weird, I think, from my experience, because it's like, I do believe in monogamy, of course, and I try to push that. It's just that, like, it was a weird situation that I went through. I think I've brought it up in the podcast before because my uncle said it. And he, like, because for some reason, it's like, because I was still a virgin at the time, my mom would have conversations with people and they'd ask, like, oh, is Amani bringing girls over? And my mom would be like, no. And that would bring up a sense of curiosity. I've even had that questioned one time if I was even into girls, and that it was, Jesus. And so, I don't know, like, I'll say this just to bring that point up. I feel like my masculinity was getting questioned because I'm not sleeping around.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and especially as a black man, it's like I had other black men that are older than me encouraging me to go out there and do that.
Right.
And I felt disrespected because it's like, I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but I feel like, okay, this is going to sound prideful, I feel like I'm better than that. I feel like I shouldn't be going out and doing that because you're just, to me, it just feels wrong. And it just doesn't, there's something unnatural about it to me that just doesn't, at least the way people are going about it, it just felt unnatural to me. So the fact that I had people around me asking me about it and then questioning me and then saying, no, you should be doing this, and then even questioning my manhood was just, it stressed me out. It stressed me out because it's like, who are you to tell me that? And this is somebody in my family I should be looking up to.
Right.
You know, so it was weird. It was extremely weird.
Yeah, yeah. To a point, I mean, like, my experience was a little different in the sense that, like, they didn't question it. They just assumed, right? Like, friends, neighbors, parents, naturally, like, since, like, the age of, like, 13, thought I was, like, out here just, like, shacking up with every girl. I'm like, no, I just really enjoy women company, right? I think they're beautiful, right? But for the most part, like, I just enjoy feminine energy, right? I think masculine energy is nice, right? But, like, for the most part, I'm like, I love to surround myself with feminine energy, right? I think even up until the point where I started messing around, like, folks had long thought it about me. I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. And they'd be like, why are you lying? Right? Like, to a point where it felt like I had to, right? Just to kind of, like, fit into the mold, right? You know, like, if you weren't dealing with a bunch of girls, then what were you really doing?
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I'm studying. You know, like, I'm studying, right? Like, I'm talking about a business plan. I'm talking about life. I'm talking about a number of things that have nothing to do with, like, sex, you know? And to me, like, the notion that a man and a woman can't be friends, to me, is ridiculous, right? Like, we are still two people, and we can still have, like, similar interest, right? So why can't we spend an obscene amount of time just talking about the things that we're interested in that have nothing to do with the physical of each other? You know, but again, all of these things, like, to me, create what feels like an unnatural relationship with the opposite sex, right? Because you're gonna learn that you can only be in relation with the opposite sex, only one you want to pursue the opposite sex for that thing, right? And it shouldn't be that, right? Like all of these things like create a habit, an ideology around the way you move through the world yet again, right? Right? Like the whole hollering at girls, right? Like you'll watch a couple of podcasts where folks are like talking about like men don't holler at girls anymore because now it's abusive, right? And so what now? If we stop hollering at girls, we're expecting the girls to come holler at us. I think at some point in the ways to kind of like going, folks will only be talking to each other from a computer, right? And I'm not saying like hollering at people is bad or good. I think again, implementation is really what makes it bad or good. You in a girl, right? Like that's how my parents would be like, you come on the streets and yo boy, right? I'm just like, I don't really know what a yo boy is, right? But to define that, it's really like the guy on the corner of the block who sees an attractive woman and he's like, yo, right? Instead of walking up to her and be like, hey, like I see you walking up and down this block every couple of days, whatever the thing is, and I thought you was really cute. Like let me chat it up with you for a bit, right? Like that to me, like those two like different actions create a different response. If I'm yoing at you,
that seems as aggressive, really.
Right. Well, not just aggressive, disrespectful, right? Like we're not like I'm saying like some women just they don't mind you saying to them like, hey, you look good, right? But if you walked up and did it in what seems like a more respectful manner, I feel like some women, right, might respond positively to it, and if they respond negatively to it too, right, it's just like let it go.
Yeah.
You shot your shot. You didn't score. Move on. Right? Like, why do we have to turn around and be like, that's why you ugly anyways, right? Or then just, like, turn around and start using, like, profane words to describe the woman who just now rejected you.
Yeah.
Because your ego has not been hurt, But you see a lot of guys do this, right? And so if you're a youth looking at that, like, that's what has now become, like, okay to like, repeat. Yeah. But yeah. What is this? Like there's a whole conversation about nature versus nurture, right? Like, do we believe that the way you are today came from your nurture, or was it just your nature to be who you are now?
And I think that's always for me, I think it's more nurture. But as time goes on, I think my nature sometimes come out, because it's like I went through something and I didn't understand why the hell I did it. Like it wasn't bad. It's just like what made me put myself in that position, because it just didn't make sense to me. Like what emotion brought out. And then I think I heard another thing, like because somebody was going through something, and it just for some reason like this protective energy came over me. And it was like, why am I feeling this? I don't want to do that. It's not my job to like do the certain thing that I was thinking. But the energy was so strong, and when I thought about it, I was like, that's what put me in the last position, because I felt bad for this person, and I was like, I need to help him. Like, and it got me burnt, and I'm like either then I feel like, a lot of it was a little bit of nurture in that too. It's just like that overwhelming energy. I was like, that is straight up nature. That was the nature of like who I am. Yeah. Like I can't change that. The only nurture part is how I respond to it. Really, that's really it. But I still do think that nurture plays a part in it, because that's you saying yes or no to your nature. But also just like your values and stuff like that, that's what are put inside you. But you could still have all of that and your nature pulls you one side.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, for me, I think like the nature versus nurture conversation is more so like your nature is essentially like what, like the mode that you're in in your like early developmental stages, right? No, sorry, your nurture is what you do in your developmental stages. right? Because everything is really all about like what you're like, all the information you're receiving, right? And that's what you essentially like emulate, right? I think when you find like a very clear version of acceptance for yourself, you know what it is that you want, what you don't like, right, and what you don't want for yourself. That's when your nature starts being developed, right? That's when you're like, no, I'm actually not cool with that, right? And everyone's like nature process starts at different times, right? And you know, and like essentially, like think in your adulthood, like that's kind of like what that's the lens that you're like seeing the world through. Your now developed nature, right? Like some men hitting women, that was nurture that has now cemented itself into your nature, right? Like I'm not okay with that, and so like if I see a man hitting a woman, I'm gonna be like, hey, like that's not cool. Now, am I ready to get into a whole fight with another man? Hell no, right? Because at that point, I'm just like, I've said what I said. I'm gonna do what I can, but to the point where like it like takes something away from me, I think like that's where I'm like I gotta cut off, you know, right? But in certain environments, they will tell you that you're supposed to take that all the way, right? If you want to jump in and save that woman, you got to be ready to put the hurting on that man to make sure that she's safe. But the challenge is, like, as I grew up, I've done that, right? To the point where, like, I fought the dude, right? And, like, we're both on the floor bleeding. And then she's over on his side talking about, baby, like, are you okay? And I'm sitting there like, yo. I'm like, I just did this thing. I'm hurt, right? Physically, right? For nothing, right? Because I thought I needed to save this person. No, I'm like, listen, do what you can, and then skedaddle, right? Because if that woman really wanted to make a change, there's no one else that can make the change if she's not ready for it, right? So you say what you got to say, and then you just move on, right? You can be like, yo, like, you want to walk with me? And if she starts walking with you, and there you go, right? Anything that happens after that, I think that's however you decide to handle that is how you handle that, you know. But yeah, I feel like we could keep circling this thing, but like the idea of a black man is really just kind of like cemented around what we know and what we think is okay. Yeah. That's all I got.
All right, we hit like the hour and 11th minute mark. I want to wrap it up, sadly. I feel like I want to keep going, but man, because this was a great podcast. But yeah, so we talked about a lot of things, and I think each subject, of course, succumbs into what, you know, of course, the identity of a black man. But I don't think we have touched everything at all, because there's so many little things, there's so many big things. I think we touched on a lot of big things, but there's a lot of little things that, of course, you know, reflects on the identity and, you know, definition. So at the end of the day, we can't, even after this conversation, we can't make up a definition, to be honest, fully. So it's just, I think it comes up to us just to, of course, choose the right things out of everything we hear and execute, of course, because there's so many things out there that can help us. There's so many things that we can do, but at the end of the day, you know, even with your nature, you have to decide whether or not you're going to do it. So
yeah, you know, black men, find community, you know, and you change the narrative. You change the narrative, or you cement the narrative, right, of black excellence, whatever excellence looks like for you, right? But find your community. You know, like, there is no need to whitewash yourself to do anything. There's no need to blackwash yourself, right, in order to fit the mold. But find your community, whatever that community looks like. There's no right or wrong way to, like, live life. Yeah, there's a group for everybody. So, yeah.
I definitely agree. I don't really have anything really to add on my part for advice. Just do what you can, really. just do what you can. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Of course, this is the original host, Amani Gray, for the Afro Latinx Leadership Alliance podcast. We also have
Aziz.
And yeah, so this was a great podcast talking about black men, and I hope y'all learned a lot today. So thank you for watching.
Peace.